Let's rodeo at the Cinch World's Toughest Rodeo, January 10th and 11th at Wells Fargo Arena. It's rodeo and a whole lot more. Come early for autographs, pony rides, and more. See more action, the best entertainment, and be part of the fun. It's too great to wait. Get tickets now at HiVTix.com. It's wild, it's western, it's pro rodeo at the Cinch World's Toughest Rodeo, January 10th and 11th.
A fuel choice that even rivals can agree on? Now that's worth the hype. Cheaper, cleaner, and homegrown. Pump it up with unleaded 88.
Hello and welcome into the Channel Seeds Studios for Bigger Than 12. I'm Jake Brend with Derek Duke. We are, as always, presented by WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax. Derek, how are you doing, my friend?
Jake, doing fantastic. What a weekend of Big 12 football. Just when you think you have this conference figured out, you're left clueless. And I also want to give a shout out to our great listeners. And we have a new listener that I want to give a special shout out to, Jason Hudipole. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Just a quick story. My mom was out in Salina, Texas for a festival this past weekend and saw Jason wearing an Iowa State polo, and she helped plug our show to him. So Jason, if you are listening, I hope my mother was nice to you and welcome to the show. And it was funny. I actually texted you guys, Jake, and I saw a lady wearing an Iowa State visor at my local brewery on Sunday. So it just goes to show you that Iowa State fans they're everywhere, man. They are everywhere.
That's awesome. Well, welcome in. And I guess if this is your first time listening, this is a podcast on the Iowa Everywhere Podcast Network, but this is a Big 12 show. We go a lot further than just Iowa State. In fact, we go way more Big 12 than Iowa State. So if you're a fan of K-State, Utah, BYU, or really anyone, welcome in. And as always, we'd like to give a special shout out and thanks to our sponsors at WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax. They're always putting the needs of their clients first, giving them advice, helping you retire. I mean, who doesn't want to retire? I don't want to retire yet, but everybody is eventually working to retire, and they're going to try and help you retire early, whatever that entails. And then once you do retire, handling all the tax stuff that is way above my head and way above the head of many. So go and give your business, go and grab a cup of coffee with our friends at WealthCharter. Tim Hawkins is the president. He's a great guy. You can schedule an appointment with him at their office in Ankeny if you visit wealthcharterretirement.com. Without further ado, we learned a lot in the Big 12 this week. We're going to bring Aiden in for our 12-pack, 12 topics.
Let's do it, fellas. All right. First question, we always start with this. Jake, who is the most impressive team of the weekend?
It's K-State. And I know once you go back and rewatch the game, West Virginia was without Garrett Green, Jaheim White, and their top offensive lineman to start the second half. That's a lot. That's pretty much their entire offense. But Avery Johnson and DJ Giddens didn't even give the Mountaineers a shot to get back in the game. They were so good, and they opened the third quarter with the ball, went down and scored, and Avery Johnson probably made the best play of his Wildcat career so far. We've kind of been on it since their loss to BYU. We've thought that K-State was still on that top tier, and I believe they proved that Saturday night. I was super impressed by what we saw.
I can't believe that I'm saying this, but give me the Baylor Bears, man. They beat Texas Tech and Lubbock 59-35, and they were underdogs in that game big time. What impressed me the most about them was the show that they put on offensively, because they rushed for over 250 yards, and Sawyer Robinson, how about him, threw 5 touchdown passes in that game, which is the most touchdown passes for a Baylor quarterback going all the way back to 2015. Massive win for the Bears. And while it may not give Aranda quite off the hot seat just yet, I think it's certainly helped cool it a little bit. And who knows, maybe they can build off a win like that and call me crazy. Maybe they can get to a bowl game.
I really hope Paul Feinbaum didn't watch that game, because if you're one of those people that has an agenda that's stuck in 2013, if the only Big 12 game you've watched all year was Baylor, Texas Tech, you're going to have a lot of ammunition to back up that outdated agenda. That was a good old-fashioned Big 12 shootout.
I love the shootouts. I'll say it. I love them.
Yeah.
I think they're fun.
They're awesome.
Let's flip around, Derek. Most disappointing team of the weekend.
For me, it's Arizona. I know we talked about this team a lot, but to go out on your home field and get beat by 28 points against Colorado was completely embarrassing. Offensively, they are an absolute train wreck because they can't protect Noah Fafita. They can't run the ball. And as we talked about last week, they have no number 2 receiver behind McMillan. And defensively, they weren't much better. They had 9 penalties and let Colorado convert 50% of their third down attempts. Also doesn't help when he turned the ball over 3 times, and nothing else to say, but this team is a complete disaster right now.
My stock in them,
bad.
Really, really bad. A team that a lot of people had stock in to start the year, it's Utah. I really thought that the distraction of the unknown around Cam Rising, with that disappearing, I really thought that would make the team better. Turns out that they just aren't that good. To get beat at home by TCU and put up that offensive performance was really disappointing. And it's not like the TCU defense is like the 85 Bears and by any stretch of the mean. So if you can't beat TCU at home, I don't know how many more games the Utes are going to win. And it's getting scary, and we're going to talk more long-term about them in just a little bit. But I was shocked and really disappointed. They were one of my locks last week, and they didn't even come close.
We're going to flip it to the other team in Utah, the best team in Utah, obviously. BYU, the Cougs, 7-0, just outside the top 10 at number 11. Jake, is BYU a team of destiny?
It sure feels like it. To win that game against Oklahoma State when everything was seemingly going wrong, and then I guess similar to what Iowa State did, have it all on the line with one drive to go and to go down. That's what good to great teams do. And BYU did that. And then you factor in, one, their defense that did have a down night, and 2, the crowd. They have a very, very, very big home field advantage, and with just 5 games to go, it's going to be huge as they're trying to make a push to the college football playoff. But the way they're winning games, nearly getting outgained, winning the turnover margin by large amounts, it just feels like someone is on their side, and that might be destiny.
It's very Iowa State-esque, is it not? So it certainly feels like it after that Friday night miracle. I mean, when Oklahoma State scored with a minute left and took a 4-point lead, I thought BYU was done. I'll be honest with you. I was one of the people that I was like, okay, this is it for BYU. This is where they lose. And instead, Jake Retzloff marched them down the field, 75 yards in 8 plays, and hits Lassiter for the go-ahead score with like 10 seconds left. So, and like you said, this team just finds a way to win games, even in close situations. And they're doing it. They're extremely balanced. It seems like they play complementary football in all phases of the game, not just offense, defense. They're all 3 phases of the game. They're really, really good. And to my surprise, they had 3 turnovers in this game, which is very uncharacteristic of them, yet they found a way to win the game. So, yeah, BYU does seem destined to go to Jerry World, and it also helps that their schedule moving forward is very, very friendly. So I look for the Cougars to probably be one of those teams, one of the 2 teams in Arlington at the end of the season.
And look, we've talked plenty about Oklahoma State and what a disappointment they've been this year. But Mike Gundy coming off of a bye, primetime game, they have none of the pressure on them. All the pressure's on the 6-0 team. And BYU got punched in the mouth. Ollie Gordon looked like Ollie Gordon again. So to respond, I was super, super impressed. And they're there's quite a few similarities between that Iowa State UCF game and the BYU Oklahoma State game. And both, I think, say a lot about all four teams, but mainly just says a lot about the resiliency of the Cougars and of course, Iowa State.
At the top of the Big 12 with BYU is Iowa State and Kansas State. Jake, do you think that it's going to be a Farmageddon play-in game for the Big 12 title?
So, yeah, I spent a lot of this week looking over the tiebreakers. And from an Iowa State perspective, the tiebreakers aren't great. Essentially, there's a world where Iowa State is 11-0 heading into the last game of the season and still needs to win that game to go to Dallas. And I say that there's a world where that happens. I actually think it's the most likely outcome is where K-State wins out until that point. BYU has either 1 or 0 losses, and then Iowa State can have either 0 or 1 loss, and they will need to win that game. So I don't really see K-State losing a game before they come to Ames in Week 12, and I don't really see BYU losing 2 different games. So all that to be said, that would be essentially a playing game to Dallas, and wow, that'd be really, really, really high stakes.
Don't start looking at tiebreakers right now. I've learned that a long time ago in this conference because they just confuse the hell out of me. It's like looking at a geometry question, and I have no idea what's going on there either. So it would be crazy for me to say that wouldn't be a play-in game. Like we've talked about all season long, that Farmageddon will likely be somebody's ticket to the Big 12 title game. And when you look at the way both teams are playing, it's clear that they're 2 of the top 3 teams in the conference. We've seen Iowa State win games in unbelievable fashion, and much like Kansas State, like they have all the pieces on both sides of the ball to be a contender. And Rocco Becht finds ways to win games, and we're seeing Avery Johnson get better and better each week. Defensively, both teams are solid across the board, and both teams, most importantly, are capable of running the football well. So I know that Iowa State and Kansas State are obviously rivals, but these teams are very similar to one another this season. With the way the schedule sets up, like Farmageddon will be somebody's way to Arlington.
Yeah, I guess my point is I know there were some Iowa State fans on Friday night confused on whether they should be rooting for BYU or Oklahoma State. Iowa State fans, you got to be rooting against BYU and Kansas State every single game is my point, because you do control your own destiny, but I still don't think Iowa State's going 12-0. So you need, especially K-State, BYU, Colorado, you need those teams to rack up a loss or 2 along the way just to have some insurance, because the last thing you want is to be 11-0 and still have to win your last game of the regular season to have a shot to get into the playoff. But man, it's shaping up to be a crazy November.
For sure.
Yeah,
You want that little bit of wiggle room so like you said, you don't have to play necessarily like playing before the weekend of the conference championship game just to try to punch your ticket in. That's like another playoff game in itself, and nobody really wants to do that.
Yeah. Utah offensive coordinator Andy Ludwig stepped down. Derek, is this kind of is this the beginning of the end of the Kyle Whittingham era at Utah?
I think that the question may be a little bit of a reach for me, because Utah, the team at Utah right now, to me, in my personal opinion, is good enough to compete for a Big 12 title. The problem is that they don't have the quarterback who can keep the offense moving on the field, because they have a championship caliber defense, but without a competent quarterback, this offense is just so one-dimensional. Like, let's be real here, honestly, in all seriousness, if Cam Rising was 100% healthy, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. When Cam was healthy, this team won back-to-back Pac-12 titles, went to 2 Rose Bowls. The problem for them is that they shouldn't have relied on his health, especially after last season. Like, they could have got a decent backup, or a veteran backup at the very least, in the transfer portal, and they didn't. Instead, they're stuck with the true freshman and Isaac Wilson. And as we've seen already, Isaac Wilson is not ready to play. He's nowhere ready to play. In fact, he's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns and is completing less than 55% of his passes. And get this, with the stats, in Isaac Wilson's last 3 starts for Utah, the Utes are 13 for 48 on third down attempts. It's less than a 28% conversion rate. I don't care what anybody says. That's not good enough to win games in this conference.
My worry for that program, so you get rid of your offensive coordinator that was a part of the program in the 2 best seasons that they've had since they made the jump to Power 5 over a decade ago. And they replace him with former Northwestern offensive coordinator, I hope I'm saying his name right, Mike Bajakian. His last 3 seasons at Northwestern, their offense ranked in yards per play 120th, 123rd, and 124th in the country. So there's all of that. There's what you mentioned as far as relying on Cam Rising's health, which, excuse me, I'm dealing with a bit of a cold, which is not a great bet. And you go ahead.
No, I think I understand what you're trying to say, Jake. And sorry, he's a little bit under the weather right now, but no, I get exactly what you're saying. You don't want to rely on a quarterback like Cam Rising, who has a proven track history of not being able to get healthy in the program. So for me, they should have went out even last season, right after last season, go find a quarterback in the transfer portal, have somebody to actually back him up, and that's at least capable of backing him up, and somebody who's actually played meaningful snaps at a program. Even if it was from a group of 5 program, you got to bring somebody in. You can't rely on a true freshman in Isaac Wilson. This Utah team this year was way too talented. They had so much coming back. They had Big 12 title hope aspirations here. So for me, I just don't understand the move of not bringing in a reliable backup, because let's face it, like I said, if Cam Rising, even if he wasn't healthy like he is now, and you have a decent backup, like Utah could still be right in this thing, right in the mix of things, even if they lost 1 or 2 games. But that's just not the case right now.
Yeah, I'm back. So it was weird looking at their schedule. They've lost 3 in a row. I know there's a bye week in there, but they haven't won a game in a month. And you got to give credit to 2 guys, Chris Hassel, Chris Williams, and they were going down the list of all of the longest tenured guys in the sport. Pretty much all of them are struggling in this new era. Whittingham, Gundy, Ferentz, Mike Stoops. So they're never going to fire Kyle Whittingham. He's the greatest coach they've ever had. He's probably the greatest coach they ever will have, but I'm just not sure it's going in the right direction, especially in a new conference.
Jake, looking a little teary-eyed. The Utes got you a little emotional.
Dude, that's
I think Utah just got you all choked up, man. That's totally fair.
I mean, they're fans. I feel so bad. They came in so humble. They were just so thankful to have an opportunity to compete in the Big 12, and it just hasn't gone their way. And yeah, that makes a guy a little emotional.
It's tragic, man. All right. Next question, Jake, is Texas Tech a fraud?
So I went back and watched our episode from 2 weeks ago because I didn't want to be crazy and be wrong on my take. And so what I said was that I thought Tech could make the Big 12 championship because, one, I think Taj Brooks and Baron Morton are pretty dynamic, and their schedule is really soft. My take also was I don't think the Big 12 should want them representing the conference in the college football playoff if they were to somehow win the Big 12 because of just how pitiful their defense is. They're allowing 38 points per game. That's a full touchdown more than anybody else. And I'm sorry, if you don't have a great defense, that's fine. But if you have the worst defense in the conference by that wide of a margin, I can't take you that seriously.
I don't want to say like Texas Tech is a fraud. Can I just say that their defense is a fraud? Because they certainly deserve to be called frauds. Because offensively, I thought Texas Tech was okay. Taj Brooks ran for over 100 yards. Baron Morton was fine in that game. I know the score got a bit out of hand later, but I mean, let's face it, like Tech should have won that game with 28 or more points. The problem for them is that defense. I mean, I thought it was getting better after that Washington State game, and they went out last weekend against their in-state rival and laid a complete egg. Gave up over 250 yards on the ground, and Sawyer Robinson just picked them apart in that secondary at one point in the second half. Get this, the defense gave up 5 straight touchdown drives. Tech's now got the worst scoring defense in the Big 12, worst passing defense in the Big 12, and the 5th worst run defense. Doesn't matter how good your offense is when your defense plays like complete garbage. This defense is starting to remind me a lot of that Cliff Kingsbury era where they just didn't give a flying you-know-what about playing defense at all. They were just going to try to outscore everybody with guys like Mahomes.
Yeah, and it's not like that's a game that they were overlooking. It's an in-state rivalry, and they just weren't awake for it. And yeah, I don't think they're one of the 5 best teams in the league.
All right. Colorado currently sits at 3-1 in the conference. Derek, do you think they can play spoiler on this whole K-State, BYU, Iowa State party at the top?
They absolutely can when you look at the rest of their schedule. I mean, but the problem is kind of their remaining schedule is pretty soft at the moment. I mean, their last 5 games are against Cincinnati, Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. I mean, call me crazy, but this Colorado team, with the way they've been playing, they're good enough to win out. Like, Sanders is one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the Big 12. So, he can do with Travis Hunter, and he's arguably the best player in the entire country. But against Arizona, like, we saw them run the football effectively and play great defense, which is what they did to UCF a few weeks ago. When they can play defense and they have a stable run game, like, they are one of the best teams in the Big 12. The reason I would say no to this question, though, is because they don't really have a true contender left on their schedule outside of maybe Texas Tech, who we just talked about. But I mean, with the way Tech's looking right now, like, there's a good chance Colorado could beat them right now.
So they're going to hit, I guess they already hit their win total, I think. And then they're going to hit their reset win total that we talked about like 3-4 weeks ago on the show. They're definitely good enough to win out, but I don't think they're completely prone to a slip up. We know I'm impressed with how they've built up front more so than they did last year with how they've held up. I guess that's probably the better word, with how they've held up on the offensive and defensive line. But I still don't know if I just trust them to go win 5 games in a row when one of those games is going to be in Lubbock. That's probably a night game. One of those games is going to be at Arrowhead Field in front of 12,000 people. So I do think there's a world where they just slip up once and that's enough to take them out of the Big 12 title conversation. But even then, they're 9-3, 8-4. That's a overwhelming success once you start from the start of the season.
Absolutely. 100%.
Well, as I think I have my number one running back at the conference, because I'll have nightmares about RJ Harvey as an Iowa State fan for years to come. Derek, who do you think is the best running back in the Big 12 right now?
Well, I'm going to bring up your nightmare here just a bit because, I mean, I caught some shade on social media last week because I had a similar question in my weekly Big 12 football mailbag, but I'm going with UCF running back RJ Harvey. The man is built like a bowling ball, and I love those guys who aren't afraid of contact. RJ runs through people and is now the Big 12 leading rusher in yards and touchdowns after that game against Iowa State. I mean, he's averaging over 6 yards a carry, for crying out loud. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love Taj Brooks, Scatabo, DJ Giddens, and Ollie Gordon, but man, I would love to have a guy like RJ Harvey in my backfield.
This might be the toughest question that we've had yet. I took so much time thinking about this, and you just mentioned all the guys that I think there's a case for. Harvey, Scatabo, Giddens, Brooks, and Ollie Gordon. And you know where my heart wants to go.
Oh, don't say it.
It's Cam Scatabo. But my answer is actually DJ Giddens. And this is kind of a 2-part answer, because when you watch the development of Avery Johnson that he's made through 7 games this season, a lot of that has been made possible because DJ Giddens has made life pretty easy on him. Getting almost 6 yards a carry, and it feels like more than that when you watch the amount of big plays that he hits. And then just the amount of runs on 1st and 10 where he gets it to 2nd and 1. That makes life on a young quarterback so easy. And the other part of this question is, if I was just thinking, who am I going to drop? I'm just going to drop one guy on a random team. Who do I want the most out of those 5 guys? I think it's Giddens. But you could make really, really, really strong arguments for any of those 5 guys, and I would probably be able to agree with you.
Yeah, I think in all honesty, that probably Scatterbo and Ollie Gordon are probably the most complete backs when you think of the big picture when it comes to the passing game, pass protection, those kind of things. But yeah, it's hard to really go wrong with any one of these running backs we just talked about. They're also damn good.
Totally agree. UCF, we're going to stick it with the RJ Harvey talk here. Should Ja'Cory Brown, is he the answer at quarterback, Jake?
He could probably be in the running for best running back in the conference. He was super dynamic on Saturday night. I mean, they have to stick with him. They have no choice. He's definitely more competent than KJ Jefferson. I think he's even more dynamic on the ground than Jefferson is. They're both running quarterbacks, but they're very different running quarterbacks. And all that to be said, I still don't know if he's the quarterback of the future there because he hasn't shown me anything with his arm. But as far as the 2024 season goes, he is clearly the best option. And I would just keep rolling with him.
Yeah, for this season, they absolutely should. 100%. If they are interested in winning games, then Brown should be their quarterback moving forward here for the rest of the year. Like, after watching him against Iowa State, it makes me wonder why they didn't put him in earlier this season. I mean, what were they seeing with KJ in practice and during games that made him, even playable at some points? But, Ja'Cory's not the greatest passer in the world, but he seems to keep the chains moving. And the guy's like, he's 6'4", like he's super tall and lengthy. He's athletic. He's capable, I think, of being a decent passer. And to me, like, he just kind of fits this offense a little bit better. Like, he brings more to the table than what KJ Jefferson does. And plus, he's just a sophomore, so it would be good to give him some experience. And who knows, like, maybe he can be the guy for them next season. But with this year already being kind of a lost cause, like, why not give a guy like Brown a chance to prove himself?
Yeah, I wonder with Jefferson if they were hesitant to go away from the guy that they spent the NIL money to come on. Okay. And that would make sense. But as far as like judging him as a passer, I don't really want him to be judged after, half a game against Cincinnati where he was trading snaps with E.J. Colson and then against the best pass defense in the Big 12. So I'm definitely willing to see how this experiment goes the rest of the year. And if he shows that he's on an upward trajectory as a passer, who knows? Maybe you're right. Maybe he could be the quarterback of the future in Orlando.
Jake, rapid fire here. Buy, sell, hold TCU, Cincinnati, and Arizona.
Well, you forgot to put a disclaimer. I'm not allowed to buy Arizona. That's courtesy of our friends at WealthCharter Financial Planning or Retirement Planning and Tax. They told me that I cannot buy any more Arizona stock, so I'm going to sell it low.
See, I think he got it wrong. It's as low as it's going to get. It can only go up from here or something.
Yeah, I'm not listening to you. That's terrible advice. I'm going to hold TCU. Definitely an impressive win. I keep coming back to it. Their coach coached in a national championship game 2 years ago. I still just don't know what to think of them. And then I'm going to buy Cincinnati. They really impressed me against Arizona State. I know that's a different Arizona State team without Sam Leavitt and obviously a team that doesn't have a kicker. But that's just like 3 weeks in a row where I've been impressed by Cincinnati, and I think of them as a solid 7-5, 8-4 Big 12 program, which I did not really think that of coming into the year. So I'm going to buy them for not only the rest of this year. I know they've got a tough schedule, but for the future, they might be a sleeper in the coming years.
Yeah, I'm kind of boring on this one because I pretty much have the same thing order you do. So let me start with the sell, and I'm going with Arizona, Jake. We've talked about this Arizona team a lot this season because they've had the highest expectations out of these three teams, and they have completely shit the bed this season. Their offense is bad. They don't have enough weapons. It's putting a ton of pressure on Fafita, who's just making mistakes. So I've been out on Arizona for a while. I'm going to hold TCU. The issue for them has been turnovers with Josh Hoover, and for once, he didn't turn the ball over against Utah, which is a big reason why they won that game. But TCU still has enough weapons on both sides of the ball to compete, but until they stop getting so many penalties and turnovers, like you can't really buy them, I guess, right now, but I'm going to hold them. But if they cut their turnovers in half, like they probably have like at least one or two more wins on that schedule, but that's just not the case. And I don't completely trust them right now. But lastly, I'm probably going to buy Cincinnati. Like I don't feel great about that, but I have doubted that team and their schedule so far, but they just keep winning games, and that's all that matters. Brendan Sorsby done a great job taking care of the football, been extremely accurate as well. What's impressed me the most with them last week was the fact that like Sorsby did not have his best game, yet the defense and the run game really stepped up from Cincinnati when they beat Arizona State. So their schedule definitely picks up, but I think I'm finally safe to say like I'm on board with the Bearcats right now.
If it means anything, as an Iowa State fan, like that Cincinnati game scares me as much as the Tech game in a way. And I would not have said that a month ago. So that can say a little bit about how low I think of Tech right now, but also that I'm a lot higher on Cincinnati. That game has been an afterthought for probably most Iowa State fans. But no, I don't think it is anymore.
Derek, whose seat is hotter? West Virginia's Neil Brown or Baylor's Dave Aranda?
This is like picking between two wildfires that just will not stop burning. Like I know Aranda just pulled off an upset win at Tech, but like I've said before, like he should have been fired weeks ago. We've talked about him before. Dave shouldn't even been brought back this year after that 3-9 season a year ago. Baylor's got like 5 games left, and they need to go 3-2 to get to 6-6. But is 6-6 like really the goal for Baylor and Dave Aranda? Like he's in year 4 or 5 now, so it shouldn't be. You're right. So like if Dave Aranda gets to a bowl game, like do people inside Baylor's athletic program think like that should buy him another year? Because I don't. Like it's better to cut ties with them now and then wait till the rope breaks. Even if Aranda finished 6-6 this year, that'd still be 3 straight seasons without a record above 500. I don't care what you say. That's not good enough. Like, and I want to close by saying, like, don't get me wrong. Neil Brown pissed me off last week. He should be fired too, but y'all know my feelings toward him, but Dave Aranda should have been gone long before Neil Brown.
I'm going to approach this not from who I think should be on the hot seat, but judging by where their respective fan bases are at. I think Neil Brown's seat is hotter. Those fans are fed up, and once a fan base is fed up, there's not many rational people in there. So, like, if the fans want Neil Brown gone, they're going to choose to ignore that on Saturday Garrett Green and Jameer White were out. Like that. At this point, there's not really any coming back from Neil Brown. And for whatever reason, I feel like Baylor fans are still, at least the ones that I engage with on Twitter, I feel like are still not in on Aranda, but they're not counting down the days until the Dave Aranda era is over. And I feel like everyone in Morgantown is just desperately waiting for the day that Neil Brown's gone. And I think that makes his seat hotter.
Also doesn't help when you hear the same, BS for the last 6 years with Neil Brown over and over and over again on every damn press conference he does. It's just the same old stick. It's getting old, getting real old.
Well, and in the latest greatest, I mean, Baylor is coming off of a big win, and West Virginia has lost back-to-back of their biggest games of the year, and they won't have another chance to get a signature win, and that's what that program is desperately seeking.
Absolutely. Jake, last one here. What was your biggest takeaway of the weekend?
I think it's that Northern Illinois is not a bad loss. And actually, like, Alabama losing to Vanderbilt's a great loss. And Iowa State winning over Iowa it's not that good of a win. And, I mean, Oklahoma State's 0-4, but the fact that Arkansas lost to them, it honestly says more about the SEC. Like, I'm so sick of all of this. There's no rational comparisons amongst the conferences. That's it. Why is Notre Dame not being punished for losing to Northern Illinois? They're treating their loss to Northern Illinois like they just lost a road game to Texas Tech or to Baylor. It's not the same. Northern Illinois is a 4-3 team in the MAC. That is a horrific loss, and that should be penalizing you 5 or 6 spots more than it is. And I know I'm upset about it now because I know that it's going to come into play in a month or two. And I'm just getting ahead of it. It's absurd. There's no such thing as a good win in the Big 12, but there's also no such thing as a bad loss in the SEC. It's ridiculous.
Don't tell Greg Sankey that. He might find this podcast and sue us or something with the way people talk about the damn SEC on national television. But I think I'll leave that for another week until we probably get to the playoff rankings. But for me, this particular past weekend, as I said on the intro to the show, like, you may think you know this conference, but you don't, and you'll see that later on when we reveal our picks for the last week. That we're not even going to talk about that right now. But the script was written, the way we thought it was going to go. Like, we thought, it was going to go this way, and the Big 12 said, like, oh yeah, watch this, and then just lit our script completely on fire. We're starting to see teams separate themselves from everyone, but at the same time, we are also seeing teams just completely eat each other alive in this conference. This Big 12 conference is a grind, an absolute grind, and it's going to come down to the last man standing. And the team that is left standing is going to be punch drunk after all those damn hits they're going to take. Wow, this conference is just unbelievable. I've said it many times before. It is like a car crash that you can't take your eyes off of.
It's crazy that Oklahoma State is the only winless team. Like, if that doesn't just say Big 12, then what does?
Yeah, considering that I had them in the Big 12 title game, now I look like a complete idiot.
And I had them winning it, so
yeah,
I look like even more of an idiot. All right, we're going to bring Aiden in for a trivia question. Am I going to get it?
Maybe. I think you have a chance. I don't know if Derek has a chance here or not.
I don't think I ever have a chance in this one.
Fair. All right. There are roughly 3 million. This is as of July 2023. There are roughly 3 million people in the state of Iowa. How many hogs are in the state of Iowa, approximately?
$3 million people. I'm gonna say, Jake, if you want to go, but I'm gonna say there's like 8 million hogs.
I was gonna go 15 million.
Okay.
You guys split it right down the middle. It's 12 million. 12 million.
Look at that.
So
teamwork. That's a lot of bacon.
For those keeping track, that's 4-1 hogs ratio humans roughly in the state of Iowa.
I'm not gonna lie to you. When you said hogs, like, the first thing, me being like, obviously, like, Iowa's known for outstanding pork production. Like, it is top notch. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But whenever I think of hogs, like, down where I'm at, I just think of wild hogs just tearing up everything. Like, they're so bad down here at times. Like, you'll see just ruts in the ground that are like 3 feet deep or bigger, just because you have wild hogs running everywhere. Especially like where I'm at down in South Texas, like, it's a big problem down here. Not the good hogs, the bad ones.
No, we got the good ones up here. Oh man, who doesn't love some bacon?
I love a good thick cut pork chop, man.
Pork chop, some hot dogs. Oh man, thank you to all the Iowa hogs out there listening. The 12 million of you. We're gonna crack one for the clones in a second, but before that, we'd like to give thanks to our friends at Freedom Tire. They got a lot of locations around central Iowa. You can go to Altoona, Ames, Fleur Drive in Des Moines, West Des Moines, or Urbandale. They have been locally and family owned for nearly 50 years, which is the best type of place you can go and take your car to get new tires, get your oil changed, or just get your annual checkup before the winter, because it is coming up soon. Iowa State basketball tips off in 2 weeks. And when I think Iowa State basketball, one, I think Hilton Coliseum, but then two, I think driving back from Hilton Coliseum in the middle of a blizzard. And you want your car ready to go, and you can do that over at our friends at Freedom Tire. You can, of course, visit any of those stores in person or go to freedomtire.com. We're going to crack one for the clones. I'm sure Derek will crack a beverage. I'm going to crack open some NyQuil after this and recover from this cold and get ready for another week into Big 12 football. Let's talk Iowa State's schedule. So there's one clear game. We already talked about it. That's going to be probably the biggest and obviously the toughest. But outside of K-State, where would you say Iowa State is most vulnerable? And I guess I'll list the games. So they go at home against Texas Tech after the bye week. They play Kansas at Arrowhead, Cincinnati at home, at Utah, and then, of course, they close with K-State.
Well, first off, I want to say that game at Arrowhead is going to be pretty much a de facto Iowa State home game. I think we all probably know that by now. I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball here, and as crazy as this may sound, I think it's Utah. Like, I know the Utes are in trouble, but that game will be in Salt Lake City the week before Farmageddon. Like, Iowa State isn't known to look ahead at games, but, that game on the road against Utah could be a potential trap game. When I look at the rest of the schedule, like you already kind of talked about it, Tech, to me, doesn't scare me that much with their defensive issues. The Kansas game at Arrowhead, as we already talked about, pretty much going to be an Iowa State home game. As for Cincinnati, like, I am buying in them, but I think the jury's still out on them and just how good they are. And their defense, to me, isn't anything special. But I will say that Tech, outside of Kansas State, has the best offense, which could make things interesting in a potential game like that. Obviously, Utah doesn't have the passing game to scare Iowa State's secondary, but they will try to establish a run game. And Brent Kuthi is a excellent tight end who could give some matchup problems for especially those younger linebackers. I could see Utah focusing on those young linebackers defensively. And for me, like, Utah, like, I say what you want about Utah's offense, but defensively, they're probably the best defense Iowa State will see between now at the end of November once they play Kansas State. Like, it could end up being one of those fist fight type of games, and Utah will certainly be looking to play spoiler because by that time that game rolls around, like, Utah may be trying to scratch and claw their way to a bowl game. But with that said, like, Kansas State is still by far the biggest game left on the schedule. As I mentioned earlier, Avery Johnson's getting better each and every week, and he's getting better with his arm, which is impressive. Of course, you can't sleep on DJ Giddens. They have some weapons at receiver. Defensively, they're probably just as good as Utah, maybe if not better. But I will say this, and obviously that we're not going to focus too much on Kansas State here, but Iowa State fans should be concerned because Kansas State is picking up steam, and they're extremely dangerous. And the Cyclones are probably going to get them at their best the way things are looking. And as we've talked about before, like, there's a good chance that Farmageddon is going to be a top 10 matchup, and a very good chance that game is going to determine who's going to go to the Big 12 title game.
I'm with you. I do still think it's Utah. Just that's probably going to be a 9:15 Central kick, if I had to guess, with how the TV times have gone. It's a place you've never been. You could be 10-0 going into it, looking ahead to K-State. But I'll play devil's advocate and say KU, just because KU's build is pretty similar to UCF's. Obviously, I don't think up front on defense they're as strong or as stout as UCF is. But that's another thing where you're playing where Patrick Mahomes plays. KU's won the last two matchups over Iowa State. I do think that matchup maybe won't be as easy as a lot of Iowa State fans might think.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair with the way things are going. I don't know if I'd probably pick Kansas second, but I don't think I probably would have picked Texas Tech second if I had to pick a second game there. But for me, it's still Utah. And like I said, I know they're not doing great right now, but the way things are set up schedule wise, like I think that could be a potential trap game.
You want a spicy question?
Shoot.
All right. So 2-minute drill. You need to score. You need a touchdown.
Ooh.
I'll give you Brock Purdy or Rocco Becht. Who are you taking?
God, I hate doing this because I just saw Rocco Becht lead a beautiful 2-minute drive against UCF last weekend. But no disrespect to Rocco, but it's Brock Purdy. Like, Brock made an impact as a true freshman at a time where Iowa State isn't nearly where it's at today. Just looking at the numbers, I went back and looked at it. Purdy had more touchdowns, was more accurate. Plus, the dude took him to the Big 12 title game and a New Year's Six Bowl. All the numbers, to me, and the logic point to Brock Purdy. It obviously helps, like, that Brock's doing pretty well in the NFL, although, you know, that game against the Chiefs we're not going to talk about. But there certainly are some similarities between them. But to me, the answer is Purdy. Like, now, if Rocco goes out and wins a Big 12 title and possibly like a playoff game, they're like, I think there's a serious conversation to be had then. But until then, I'm still sticking with Brock.
Fate of the universe on the line. The Martians have the death beam pointed at Earth. You better score. I want Rocco Becht.
Oh, wow.
We're talking 2-minute drive. That 2-minute drill, that's all. It's nothing against Brock Purdy, but there were a couple times in his career where he was in that situation, and Brock would have the tendency to try and do a little too much, try and take things into his own hand. And, like, trust me, that's what made Brock special. And that's why he helped turn the Iowa State football program around. But again, there were a couple times where it played against him. As far as Rocco goes, I just trust him decision-wise a little bit more. And they've played 7 games this season. He's had 2 chances to lead a team down the field where the win probability was less than 1%, and he's done it both times. And there's something I was listening to Anthony Becht on the CW pod today, and there's just a certain competitive nature to Rocco that I'm not saying Purdy doesn't have, but there's just something different about him when it's all on the line, the ability for him to just flush out anything negative that happened before that. And I truly believe that if, you know what, down 5 points, 2 minutes left, no timeouts, I'm giving the ball to Rocco.
And I think that's fair. Like, there is a calmness to, like, Rocco Becht and, like, that cool factor where, like, I think you're right, where he doesn't necessarily feel that outside pressure. Like, he can kind of slow things down a bit and, you know, kind of lighten the mood compared to, like, when Brock might be that amped up guy that's willing to squeeze it in between 2 defenders or 2 safeties in the last minute. So I can see both sides of the argument here.
Yeah, the main example from the UCF game that I think of is, I believe it was, so it would have been the 2nd and 10, the play before the Higgins pass interference. Rocco rolled out and just threw the ball away. And in a situation like that, I mean, you've only got 2-3 downs left to go and you need to get 10 yards. I trust him to throw the ball away more in that situation, whereas Purdy might have tried to hit Jalen Nolan double coverage. That's where, like, I know you're literally picking hair. Like, you're picking between 2 of the best quarterbacks in school history. But let us know your opinion. I would imagine that mine would probably be the hotter take, but I'm not sure. I guess we're going to bring Aiden in. Aiden, do you want to stay bipartisan, or do you have a thought?
I'm going to hold my opinion for 2 more seasons, I think.
Okay, that's fair.
That's fair.
I will say, I think Rocco Becht is better as a sophomore than Brock Purdy was as a sophomore.
I think I agree with that too.
I don't know about that one, guys.
Well,
Hear me out. He has all the good that Brock Purdy had without the bad.
Brock Purdy didn't really, numbers wise, they're not like the interception to touchdown ratio is like not like far. So what
I mean by the bad is like the weird fumbles or the bad timing interceptions. That's what I mean by the bad, if that makes sense.
Okay. I know what you're saying. I understand. I'm still taking Brock.
Yeah, Rocco hasn't had that 2019 Oklahoma State game yet.
Yes.
And granted that could come. I hope it doesn't, but there is a little bit of a factor where, like, if that was Purdy playing quarterback on Saturday after the second pick six, there might have been a third pick six that came. And we saw that in the Cyhawk game and stuff like that. I do not want this to be hating on Brock Purdy, because that is not what I intend to do, because he's the most
Brock Purdy hater.
He's the most important Cyclone probably of all time. So we're creating content here.
Yep.
But Aiden, random Big 12 quarterback.
All right.
Is it Brock Purdy?
Ooh, that'd be good.
No.
Okay.
0-for-1, Jake. All right. This player is from Fort Worth, Texas. He attended a college as a walk-on in his home state before transferring to a junior college, and then eventually transferred to a Big 12 team. He had, let me find the number quick, 76 total touchdowns at this Big 12 school in 30 games played in a 3-year span.
The being from Fort Worth thing, like that really doesn't narrow it down. There's so many quarterbacks from Texas. Like, that's like the Dallas, the DFW area is just so popular. So many great quarterbacks have come out of there.
Are you familiar with Brewer High School?
In Fort Worth?
That's where he went. Yeah.
No, that doesn't even sound like a power in Fort Worth.
So the first clue, it was he originally went to a college in his home state.
Yep.
Okay.
You said a junior college, correct?
No, they are Division I.
So
FCS, I believe.
He went D1, then JUCO, then
JUCO, then Big 12.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Was the JUCO in Texas?
No. California. Yes, California.
Ooh.
JUCO in California.
Boy.
His name is a combination of 2 Kansas State quarterbacks.
What the heck?
I don't even think I have a guess for that. Walked down to a Big 12 school, went to JUCO in California, then
walked on to an FCS school.
An FCS school.
Yep.
Went JUCO.
FCS school.
I don't have a guess.
That's like a... Might have to give us the school or something. I don't even I don't have an idea where to even start. Or
his last year at the school, they won 10 games. They went 10-3 and won the Cactus Bowl.
Yeah, I got nothing.
It takes a lot to stump you here, Derek.
I mean, these questions are hard. Like, these don't really narrow it down. There's so many quarterbacks that come from Texas and then go to some FCS school or a JUCO and then come back. But like, I'm trying to think of somebody that just, is there like an era? Like, can you give me like a 5-year time span or something? I don't even know. I have no idea.
He was at the school from 2014 to 2016, the Big 12 school. That's the final hint.
Was it like West Virginia?
Yes.
Oh, damn it. Is it what
is that
the
your blind
hell's
spot?
his
West
name?
Virginia?
Oh man. He was 20. Sorry, I don't mean to cuss like that. I'm not going to get it, but I can picture the guy because his last year was 2016. Golly. Like West Virginia was like, I don't know why I keep thinking Skyler, but it's not a Sky. Is his name Skyler?
You're halfway there.
Is it Skyler Howard?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that brings back some memories.
The names combined were
Skylar Thompson, Will Howard.
Yeah.
When you said Cactus Bowl, like that kind of brought it up, but
Wow,
I had no idea Skylar Howard was from Texas. I remember one time they beat Texas Tech, and then he immediately like stuck the tortilla in his mouth, and they were like, "Dude, you don't want to do that. You don't know where those tortillas come from, man." But yeah, I remember him. He was
Tortilla Tech.
He was pretty solid under Dana. He had some good last year. I think 2016, like they were competing for a Big 12 title that year, and I think they got blown out by Oklahoma in that like freezing game. So I remember him. He was a decent quarterback.
Just FYI, he walked on to Stephen F. Austin. That was the school that he walked on to.
Okay,
I would have never gotten that. That was tough.
There's too many damn schools here. It's hard to really pick that. But yeah, that was a good one. That was a really good one.
All right, well, let's get into our week 9. We can move past week 8, right? We don't really need to talk about our performance.
No, we do not. They were awful.
We'll just say we were both under 500. We'll leave it at that. Let's hope for a bounce back in week 9. Another week, no 11 a.m. kicks. Man, that Arizona State Cincinnati game last week at 11 was nice. Just having something to wake up to and watch, but no luck this week. We've got BYU, the 11th ranked team in the country, going to UCF for a 2:30 kick on ESPN. The Cougs are favored by 2 with the over-under at 55.5.
BYU struggled last week against OSU, and UCF looked much improved against Iowa State, but the Cougars are built to stop the run, which is what UCF's going to do, as we all know. I like the matchup to me for me to watch here is going to be BYU's offense versus UCF's defense. But I'm still looking at that line. Like I like BYU by at least 3 here, so give me the Cougars to cover.
Everything tells me to pick BYU, but the line being so close just tells me that Vegas is toying with me. So I don't know if I'm taking the bait or if I'm making the smart play, but I'm going to take UCF +2 and see if they can hand BYU their first loss. See if they can build off of what momentum they had last week. But again, this is another week where I don't know if I feel good about a single pick. Like I really, really struggled with making picks this week.
Same.
Next up, Oklahoma State at Baylor. The Bears favored by 6.5 at home. The over-under at 65 for a 2:30 kick on ESPN+.
Out of all the games, I think this is the one I had the toughest time with. Like Oklahoma State looked better against BYU, and Baylor had a hell of a day in Lubbock last weekend. But another game with the high over, and I think to me Baylor maybe favored a little too much for me. So I think Ollie Gordon will keep Oklahoma State in it because both defenses aren't very good. So give me the Cowboys to cover, but I think Baylor will win. But I think Oklahoma State still covers.
Yeah, I agree. I just trust Gundy. He's 0-4. I don't think Gundy's going 0-9. They're going to get a win eventually. I'm just going to take the 6.5 blindly if I'm getting it as a road dog and hope that they keep it a 1-score game.
For sure.
Next up, another rivalry game within Texas. Texas Tech at TCU. The Horned Frogs are favored by 7 for a 2:30 kick on Fox, over under 66.5 points. That's a lot.
Man, battle for the saddle. This has classic Big 12 game written all over it. And it reminds me of back when these two had like the best offenses in the Big 12, where these two were scoring like 45, 50 points against one another. Both defenses aren't very good, so we could see a lot of points and potential turnovers in Fort Worth. So I think the over is high, but man, I think this one could spill into the 70s. I'm taking the over here.
This is a classic overreaction. Tech coming off of a blowout loss, TCU coming off of a road win. I think it's a few too many points. I'm just going to take Texas Tech plus a touchdown in a rivalry game. I haven't taken an over-under yet. We'll see. We'll see if that's coming up. Man, who would have thought this game would have such little significance? Utah at Houston. The Utes favored by 3.5. The over-under set at 37. This game is going to be played on Big Ten Network. No, I'm kidding. 6 o'clock on ESPN Plus. Derek, what do you think?
It'd probably be played on like Big Ten Plus or something, whatever they have, whatever their B channel is. Because if you like offense, get out of here. Like, you do not want to watch this game, and I don't trust either offense, but that over-under is crazy low. Like, that is like peak Iowa level low, and it's too low for me to take the under, so I feel safer with taking Utah to cover here.
I got to take Utah. I'm sorry. I don't care who they're rolling out at quarterback. They should beat Houston by 4 points.
Exactly.
Three games to go. West Virginia at Arizona. Arizona favored by 3. The over-under is 55 for a 6 o'clock kick on FS1.
Both teams aren't very good on either side of the ball. These two teams are in the bottom 4 of the conference in scoring on offense and defense. Maybe this is their game where the teams find some offense because these defenses just aren't very good. But I don't know. I don't feel really comfortable about this pick at all, but I think I'm going to take a flyer on the over here. But again, I don't feel great about that one bit.
See, I'm going the other way. I'm just going to take the under. We don't know what West Virginia's quarterback situation's like. Arizona's been so inconsistent all year. I like this game to stay in the 20s. Not total, but like someone wins 27-23 or whatever. Something like that in that ballpark. All right, 2 games to go. Clearly the 2 biggest games of the weekend. The Sunflower Showdown. Kansas goes to Manhattan to take on K-State. The Wildcats favored by 10 for a 7 o'clock kick. The over-under is 55.5 as well.
I know Kansas just put a beat down on Houston, but Kansas State is not Houston. The Wildcats are a different animal, and Avery Johnson is getting better each and every week. Kansas State's defense is good enough to give Kansas offense some problems, and Kansas doesn't have the offense to stop Kansas doesn't have the defense to stop Kansas State's offense at this point. You know, I said it before, but I would not want to play this Kansas State team right now, especially in Manhattan. I'm taking the Wildcats covering.
I have a really hard time taking double-digit favorites in a rivalry game, and for every reason you laid out, that's why I'm going to take the over. I think this game gets really high in scoring. I do think K-State does cover, but I feel more confident in the over. And finally, Cincinnati goes to Colorado, 9:15 Big 12 after dark. The Buffs favored by 4.5, the over-under 57.5.
I've seen enough of Colorado to feel comfortable about them when it comes to picking these games. Colorado has the better defense, and when it comes to the numbers, like, I don't think there's any question that Colorado has the better talent here. Give me Shadur Sanders, Travis Hunter, most importantly, Dion. Boulder will be lit, literally. And just like Dion, this pick is prime time. Give me the Buffs, baby.
I love the Buffs too, and I don't like how much we're crossing over, but I'm going to stick with it. I love Colorado by 4.5. And because we both did so poorly last week, we're going to bring Aiden in for his minute of fame, and I'm going to go get a glass of water before I start coughing really bad again.
We'll take it over, Jake.
Aiden? What you got, Aiden?
All right. You know what? I'm going to let you choose what I talk about. It can be either Iowa State related or not Iowa State related. I have 2.
Okay.
Locked and loaded.
Shoot.
I'm gonna go with, well, it is Iowa State and it's not Iowa State. I just want to talk about black uniforms and alternate uniforms in general. Iowa State for the last 2 home games have worn an alternate white with black trim and alternate black with white trim. Did I say that right? Yeah. I think it is hilarious to see other fan bases. You can't wear that color. It's not a school color. I tell you what, if you talk to any player on the roster, and this isn't just limited to Iowa State, this is any school out there that wears an anthracite or, you know, a black or a white or whatever it is, there's other schools saying you can't wear that color. I can guarantee you every player is all for wearing those colors. Like, I've talked to several former Iowa State players talking about the black uniforms, and they feel extra juiced. You know, it's weird. It's a legit thing, but I mean, it's just so funny to me to see other people care so much about what a team wears. I personally love alternate black, gray, white uniforms, whatever. And I think you can get away with it when it's a neutral color like that. If Iowa State rolled out in K-State purple, I'd be like, you know what? I think the line has been crossed. But when you can add something to an atmosphere like they did the other night, I think you have to wear. I mean, even Matt Campbell after the game said, you know what? The black jerseys, they believed. If that's what it takes for these guys to believe in something, I don't care what you wear. I mean, the black uniforms are sick. That's all I got. Thank you.
I completely agree with you. I think we've talked about off air before, but like there's some great uniforms in this conference that involve black. Like TCU's all blacks when they had that, and the purple chrome helmet was my favorite look in the Big 12. Baylor would wear all blacks with the gold chrome helmet. Like there's some fantastic uniforms, and Iowa State's done a great job with it too. Like I don't mind teams incorporating more of the black and white, like all black or all white uniforms. Like it can look really good. Like obviously when you throw in a completely different color in there, it looks a little weird, but with black and white, like there's so much you can do with it. Even if you add a little trim of your school colors in there, like it looks really slick and really clean to me.
It's like the uniforms aren't for John from Des Moines, age 67 on Twitter. The uniforms are to get recruits. They're to look good, play good. Personally, I do like the alternates. I wish there was some cardinal and gold on them, but that's just one man's opinion. But I personally love the black and whites. I did like the white and blacks more, I think. The Script Cyclones was like...
yeah, for sure.
Those are perfect, but yeah, I think people need to realize that the uniforms aren't necessarily for them. It's for the players and it's for the future players.
If they could have worn those Cyclones, like the white helmet with the black Cyclones written on that, like if they would have the white helmet and that was written in like red or cardinal, like that would have been just peak, just absolutely perfect. Even if you had white uniforms underneath that, like just adding a touch of that color, a touch of that cardinal, a touch of that gold really makes a uniform, especially like an all white one, really, really pop.
I agree. And those talking black uniforms, the old Oklahoma State ones with what do they call that logo? The Pete
Pistol Pete?
Yeah, Pistol Pete logo.
Yeah.
Man, those are
Oklahoma State has the best uniform
those are
selection in the entire league. And that's across all sports.
Yeah, they have the best like selection. Just their rotation there is insane. Like they could wear a different jersey and uniform combination for like the next 15 years without hitting the same one twice. It's very, very impressive what they do with their uniforms.
100%. Well, I hope you came here for some uniform talk because you got it. But that's going to do it for us ahead of week 9 of Big 12 play. I can't believe that we are already here. Just
what happened?
Just a month and a half to go, and we're going to be in Arlington. Crazy. But if you've been with us for the whole journey so far, if this was your first week listening or anywhere in between, thank you so much for your support of Bigger Than 12. If you would, just follow us, like us, subscribe wherever you're listening, however you're watching, and leave a review and tell a friend. Thank you so much to WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax for coming along and presenting Bigger Than 12.